Hello all, today I'd like to talk about Governor Gary Johnson, the Libertarian candidate for president in 2016. He may already, in one way, be the most successful third-party candidate in the United States in over a century. This is because he's managed to beat something that I like to call the vice president trap. Let me explain. On Sunday, the Libertarian Convention happened in Orlando, Florida. And as expected, Gary Johnson got the nomination. What also happened, which is less expected, is that he also was able to get his choice as vice presidential candidate, former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld, as his running mate. This is surprising because the Libertarian Party, I think, had a pretty understandable reluctance to run two former Republican governors as their candidates. It was the right choice for electability, but I can see why some Libertarian Party folks are angry. I have one major problem with Bill Weld. That's the fact that he went to Harvard University. You can click on the link up here to find out about my issues with Ivy League candidates. But other than that, he's pretty great. He was, much like Gary Johnson, he was a much-loved governor of a state. They both got executive experience, more executive experience than either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. These guys are serious, real politicians. I think the Libertarian Party made the right choice by going with Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. This could be the biggest third-party election since 1992. This could even be the biggest third-party election since Teddy Roosevelt ran third-party in 1912. Why do I think that? Because Gary Johnson has already leapt over the obstacle that tripped up both of the largest third-party candidates of the past 50 years. I'm talking about the vice president trap. Ross Perot's Reform Party was a very real threat to the major parties in 1992. It ended up receiving 19% of the vote, but at some points it was polling significantly higher than that. Perot did a number of things to sabotage himself, but the biggest was probably his selection of running mate. This is how Admiral James Stockdale introduced himself at the vice presidential debate.
Who am I? Why am I here? I'm not a politician, everybody knows that, so don't expect me to use the language of the Washington Insider.
That was a cute intro, but the rest of his debate performance never really answered those questions. Stockdale was an enormously impressive human being, but he was not a politician on any level, and more importantly, he couldn't present himself as one. He became a national joke and helped sink Perot's campaign. George Wallace's independent run in 1968 was almost as terrifying as Donald Trump's is today. He was proudly racist and mostly ran on segregation, but his anti-establishment politics had a broad appeal outside of the South as well. George Wallace was a scary guy. Thankfully, he managed to find a guy who was even scarier to run with. Have you ever heard the phrase, bomb them back into the Stone Age? Well, the guy who came up with that phrase, supposedly, was General Curtis LeMay. LeMay was a World War II hero. He was responsible for designing the bombing campaigns that killed hundreds of thousands of Japanese civilians. We used to be pretty proud of that. He stayed famous after the war as the guy in charge of our nuclear bombers. But by the late 1960s, figures like LeMay were falling out of favor, even with racists. In his first press conference as Wallace's VP candidate, LeMay refused to rule out using nuclear weapons in Vietnam, making everyone very nervous. With LeMay on the ticket, Wallace was limited to 13% of the popular vote. Major party candidates have been derailed by their choice of a vice presidential candidate as well. John McCain was going to lose anyway in 2008, but his introduction of the desperately unprepared Sarah Palin to the national stage didn't help. More seriously, George McGovern, the Democratic candidate in 1972, destroyed his candidacy with a bungled choice of running mate. His pick, Thomas Eagleton, had a history of mental illness that he tried to hide. By letting this happen and failing to deal with the situation quickly, McGovern managed to look dumb, indecisive, and disloyal. His campaign never recovered. This won't be a problem for Gary Johnson. By picking Bill Weld and convincing the Libertarian Party to let him do it, he's already beaten the vice president trap. Gary Johnson may not end up being the most successful third-party candidate in a century, but he's already taken a crucial step towards that goal. I think that's pretty exciting. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe. And if you'd like to help me make more videos like this one, please click on the Patreon link here to find out how. Oh, and also, I've recently resurrected my email newsletter. You can find links to all this stuff in the description below. Thanks.